Hey, we're back. This is episode 29 of your average esports podcast. And with me is Skim, not to be mistaken for Skim, because we are going into territories where he might be mistaken, and I don't want any sort of public outcry or outrage from the Chinese or the non-Chinese, even though there's so few of you, but you never know.
I'm actually scared that I just can't enter China for some reason because they're like, "Yo, aren't you the guy that was super, you know?"
Yeah. And then
whatever. But I actually have been mistaken for Skim a couple of times.
I'm not too surprised because people can't read. Like
No, it's also I was in Hamburg on LAN and Loda introduced me to one of his players. Like, "Yo, this is Skim," and he's like, "Oh, you're Skim. Oh, nice to meet you. Oh, cool." And immediately I could tell, no, I'm not Skim. I'm Skim. He's like, "What?" And like, you could definitely tell when they think they know you because obviously, But
yeah, similar name, but not really. Like I think Lurpus had this problem when he switched over to Tommy on his Twitter ID because all he got were politician retweets or something, political retweets.
And that's why people still refer to him as Lurpus.
Yeah. So anyway, there's shouldn't be too much to talk about, but we'll see. I said that last time and it ended up being like one of the longer episodes.
It probably was actually, yeah.
Yeah. So this time we're talking about last time. No major happened. This time just the qualifiers, Chongqing Major and then the Bucharest Minor. So let's start with you got any preferred region you want to start out with?
We can just start with NA. I think it's like the first one that pops up.
So NA, where do I begin here? Okay, well, I'm pretty sure we both agree EG and Forward were shoo-ins for this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then after that, we're gonna have to get into some weird shit. So so tell me about J Storm because I was gonna go ahead and bet against them. I was like, man, it's just a bunch of Koreans again, but they made it through.
At the last major in Kuala Lumpur, I said that I could see them making like a big an upset at the event because I actually think they're much better than what their result at the major also might indicate. But that's like a whole nother topic. But generally speaking, I think they're a pretty good team. I think right now, without a doubt, they're the third best team in NA.
Yeah.
There's nobody really contesting that. I thought that at this event, I think our team generally or traditionally we've done a good job at beating other NA teams. Sort of, even if NA teams if I had to compare the teams on an international stage, they would probably be better than us.
Yeah.
But we've done a really good job usually at doing well within our own region. But we obviously didn't show up, or it was just too early for this team, I think. And then the only other team that I think had an actual chance of upsetting was Plus Ultra, the Envy stack with Snake King and Fear.
Yeah, the most random Envy stack I've ever seen.
Super random. They immediately disbanded right after they lost to EG.
Yeah,
right after Fear was tweeting out looking for
seconds
a new team.
after. It's like, I'm out.
Yeah,
we're all
basically
out.
And then 2 hours after that, immediately it was confirmed that Envy was part of the new Infamous as well, together with Snake King or something. No, but I think Plus Ultra actually didn't play that badly. I think I think there's some internal issues or because if you just judge by the way they play, I don't really think you would say they would have to disband. They did get crushed by EG, so I guess there's that. But they did look pretty good against us, which I guess doesn't necessarily mean that much.
Because you guys also got taken out, so yeah. Okay, so there's something weird going on with basically the fourth best team in NA, which is either your team or Plus Ultra or whatever. But basically, there's nothing stable down there to build on. And I'm gonna go ahead and say this, even though probably Kyle no longer wants to come back and play. I think when you had him, you guys had a better solid foundation.
I think so too, and I think this is something that people have, I think, rightly called out, that right now this team doesn't really have an identity and any sort of foundation. I think part of the reason is because the players that do stick around aren't actually the captains of the team usually. Obviously,
basically everybody except Z Freak and Limp are gone, right? So
yeah, and we like switch captains pretty much every like 3 months almost.
Yeah.
So it is difficult to like keep like any like sort of like foundation. With Kyle, we always had like a sort of like idea, a base idea of what we wanted to do, and then just like based on the players that we had, we would do this. But I think this is just, it doesn't matter if we have Kyle or not. It just basically matters whether or not we keep a captain.
Yeah, and
I think that's the big.
Yeah, that hasn't been happening, and I don't actually know if Adam's already gone or not. But I don't even know if Adam's not necessarily that great of a captain.
I think at least from my personal experience, I think he does make a good. He does do a good job as a player and as a captain. But I do think that probably his strength would be as a sort of like second leader in a team and not like as the main leader.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we did have like a captain and he would be sort of like the second shot caller, I think that would maybe suit him better. I mean, he did coach, I think, very successfully as well. So, but right now, I think it's just I think for now, this team's focus should be really on just like finding a stable roster and working with that one.
Yeah.
But this team is on trial for now. I think this is the same roster that's going to play the minor as well. But you can also see some good stuff. Like Death, I think, is actually a really good offlaner. Like individually speaking, I don't think there's many issues to point out really with this team.
But it's like...
but that's I don't think that's ever been one of our problems really. Like I don't think individual mistakes have necessarily been that big of a problem. There have been individual mistakes and problems in previous rosters, but generally speaking, I think the issue has always been like finding like a way to make everybody work in the same team.
It's like not only that, but like your synergy's never been great, and it's never been like truly meta independent, I guess would be one way to put it.
There've been some iterations where that's been the case, and where we've tried to, and where we've actually set the meta in a lot of ways, certainly in NA. But yeah, generally speaking, it's like if you're a team that's generally like behind everybody else, it's difficult to find your own pace unless you have a lot of like downtime and like no stress. I think compared to Alliance, for example, I think Alliance has done a really good job at building like a very stress-free environment in a lot of ways. Like their team for the past year has been steadily improving. They didn't go to any lands, which was obviously sucks, but at the same time, it allowed them to like just work on their stuff.
Yeah.
Our team, we were like always like good enough to like qualify every now and then, but losing at those events then killed concentration. It killed like focus, and it also killed like the entire atmosphere in the team. Yeah, and everybody's like, well, we suck, we lose, and it kind of like, you know, messed with the chemistry. I think it would help if there was some way where we keep like a team, maybe for like Alliance, exactly like Alliance, for a longer period of time to be able to build into that, and then find our own identity, like Alliance did. Like right now, they play their own meta.
Yeah, they really do play their own meta. But it's like, it's tough because their style is very Swedish. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about like their play style. I mean like their core mentality is really Swedish as like a team. And you guys are all from NA. Well, except for this iteration where it's mostly from SEA. But in general, like NA players and NA teams, they don't have that kind of like
pretty much.
Like basically like Swedes are pretty evened out most of the time. They're like on the emotional scale they'll be like
very mellow.
They'll be like 7 out of 10 most of the time. Whereas like NA players, you're gonna go from like 10 to like 0 pretty often, and that kind of that can break apart a team unless you have like a really strong dictator type, like PPD or something like that, right? And
right now we definitely don't have like a dictator type. Like I don't think Adam or Zach are really the dictator type of captains. But then again, it's like difficult to say that because difficult to say whether or not we really need one. Because ultimately our identity isn't really NA either. Like
it's not anything right now. That's right? Like that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
Which can be fine. Like technically, Puppy's already made this work before, where he's like, yeah, we got some from C, we got some from Europe, and then we just kind of roll it together. But even then, it's like based off of him rather than the players.
Again, I think with this squad right now, it's just a little bit early to call it really.
Call it either way.
They do need time. And I think we'll talk about that later anyway when we talk about the minor qualifier. But I think they have a good shot in making the minor at least, which you know would already be pretty big for them. Yeah. But yeah, right now they're like not even 4th in NA, which is really rough. I think right now, well, it's difficult to say because Plus Ultra disbanded.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, I think you really need to be like you really want to be the third best team in NA because NA for some reason is getting these slots, which I guess is also something worth talking about. The fact that they have 3 slots for the major is a little bit ridiculous, but
Yeah, I'd probably give them 2 slots and then move an extra slot to the minor.
yeah, maybe, or I don't know. I would just be happy with deducting that 1 slot and giving it to Europe, and that's it. Really,
just give it to Europe. Europe, you deserve this. Like
I mean, Europe has
it
Europe
really depends
has,
on Europe. Like
Europe has Secret, Liquid, NIP, OG, Alliance.
Yeah, like
these teams not only like obviously. I think one of the reasons why they only got 3 is because Liquid and OG set out.
Yeah.
I think if they had participated in the last major, well, that's difficult to say though because the teams that did participate in the last major from Europe did perform well.
Yeah, like no, here's the problem is like if you're talking about the slot allocation, it's not gonna. I don't actually think they're doing it normally. Like what I mean by normally is like if you look in the past, they'd always be like, who are approximately the best teams, and then we allocate based off of that. This one's more like each region gets X amount based off of what happened last year.
Which I think is bad, though.
Yeah, I obviously think it's bad.
I do think that's what they're doing, but I think it's really, really bad. Same, obviously, with the slots for China. Like, in what universe does China get 3 slots right now?
Yeah, probably don't.
That universe doesn't exist.
Like, I basically agree with like, I feel like if you want to use the system, I'd go with like PPD's like compromise, which is like top 4 from last major get invited, then every other region gets 2 slots and the minor gets 2 or something like that.
I'm fine with that too because the last major performance needs to play into that. You can't just, especially in stack regions like Europe, right? Like Alliance, honestly speaking, I think there was a fair chance that they didn't make it this major because I just genuinely thought they wouldn't make it against OG and NIP.
Yeah.
But they did, which is great, obviously, for them. But if they hadn't made it, I think they still are a good team that's, like, probably, like, if we had, like, a world ranking, I'd still probably put them up 12, 14, or whatever. So they deserve to be at the major. And obviously the same goes to NIP and OG.
Yeah.
Who neither of them made it.
Yeah.
So I think the question now is going forward, like we can't just have this happen where one of the best teams in the world isn't going to the major because they happen to be in the same region as the top 4 best teams in the world or whatever.
Yeah, that's kind of what's happening with Europe right now.
The thing is, when previous years, obviously this doesn't necessarily compare because we didn't have a DPC and invites were based more on merit and yada yada yada. But when China was strong, China got 5 invite, right?
Yeah.
Like Valve and iStroke were not afraid of giving China 5 direct.
And nobody complained because like
everybody knew that they were the 5 of the best teams.
Yeah, like everybody accepted the fact like they deserved it because they were the 5 best teams. Like that's kind of and then but like I said, they went in this weird like egalitarian approach. It's not really my cup of tea necessarily, especially with how like important the majors are to getting into TI now. So yeah, basically I'm pretty sure PPD was right about this one. If you're going to use this type of system, right?
Yeah, I agree. But obviously, we're not with that system right now, so we gotta see which teams do make it. And I think right now it's okay. The teams that didn't make it, it's like between OG and NLP, one's not going to be at the major. I'm okay with that, even though it sucks because I think both of them could be like a top 6 team. But then when you watch them play, at least in Europe, which again, it's not fair because they're playing against top teams, right?
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I don't think either team is really stronger than top 6 right now. So it's like whatever, but it also really sucks considering then you see two South American teams, whatever.
Yeah. So I guess we'll talk about Europe for a bit.
Yeah, let's talk about Europe.
We're there. Secret, not a surprise. I think I thought for sure Secret was going to make it through based off of like how good they were at the major.
Yeah.
And I wasn't surprised at all. Liquid just like, no, we're back. I was like, yes, this sounds about right. Like I thought last season they were just straight up last cycle they were burned out basically, and they didn't recognize it themselves. But they got lucky and they kind of like trashed out and like, oh, I guess we may as well take a break. Right.
And they really utilized that break really well.
Yeah. So I think
Kuroki played Artifact.
Yeah. Kuroki played in one Artifact or not one, but like did pretty well.
Top 4.
Top four, yeah. Yeah, like haven't seen that since like a StarCraft 2 player did the same thing basically. Like a Sen from Taiwan basically won like a StarCraft 2 tournament and like a Hearthstone tournament back to back or something weird. But beyond that, like I basically
watched that.
What?
I watched that. I watched that Hearthstone tournament.
Yeah, that's pretty. It was like really funny. It's like, oh, I guess he just cheeses his way through and wins.
Yeah,
okay, why not?
I remember.
As for Liquid, gotta say, I feel like I am releasing an article I think this week about Liquid. Basically, they're on track to be like the third exception to the rule. Basically, the rule being like after a set amount of time, like 9, 10, 11 months of like a 5-man standing roster, you almost never get back to like championship level, except in the case of Virtus Pro from CSGO, Wings from Dota 2, and now possibly Liquid.
I mean, I think Liquid more so than Wings, right?
Yeah, but basically, like I think Liquid is already like better than them, but like the difference is like Wings started off trash for a long period of time. I mean, trash.
Well, that's true.
And whereas like Liquid is like immediately good.
That's true. No, that's a good point. Yeah. No, Liquid. I mean, yeah. I think right now the way they performed, and I guess you do have to mention that they played Vega and Final Tribe, two teams that I think are actually
Pretty
significantly
easy.
weaker than Liquid, at least in terms of even like just playstyle. But yeah, Liquid just breezed through this for sure. And I think you could tell that they were just like having a good time when they're in the match against Secret. Obviously, seeding means jack shit. So what they did, they just padded Kuroki's stats. So he has like played all the heroes in Dota 2 in competitive games.
They just did it for the fuck of it. Yeah.
They just did it for the fuck of it. Now he needs to win with all of them. I think he's like missing 11 heroes or whatever.
Yeah.
But still, I think Liquid just showed that they're like sort of back. I think we can say they're basically back. They have a little bit of off time between now and the major as well, so I think this is really good timing for them. Secret, like you said, just as expected, and NIP, I want to say also as expected. Sort of. I didn't expect them to actually go through this qualifier, but I also didn't expect them to lose to the Final Tribe and Vega. I could see them losing to one of them, but both of them was really rough, and I think the way they played is actually a little bit worrying for NIP because it's significantly worse than what they did at the major.
Yeah.
Which is sort of to be expected because I think Mind Control is a significantly better offlaner than 3-3. But like PPD said at the major, like your playstyle doesn't change because of a new player necessarily.
Yeah.
Like the strategies that you have, they still apply, right?
Yeah.
So, but still, I did think that NIP was just worse on pretty much everything from start to finish. That was just the worst team this event. It's worrying because the team needs to grow. Like this is a team full of players that actually have, like that supposedly have potential, right? Like you have Ace, you have 3-3, you have Saksa, you have Fata. I guess Fata is like a very veteran.
No, Fata is basically like you know what you're getting out of him, but it's like.
But the thing is, like he has that room to grow where he like gets back to his old form as
I guess because he's mid laner. Yeah.
Exactly, that's the room that I'm looking for. Saksa is playing the four position, which he hasn't done when he was like when he basically the most successful. He was a 5.
Yeah.
So that's where his room to grow is, but he can like be a better 4, which I guess he's like I think he's actually been probably one of the most.
He's probably been one of their better players.
Yeah, better players. But then you look at 3-3 and Ace, who I think have very limited hero pools, who definitely need to grow their hero pools and their versatility, but also their like stability and consistency. And then they just play worse and worse from event to event, and you gotta wonder, where's this team going?
Like, here's the interesting thing. Basically, I was running up some awards right for the DPC from last year. And and then when it got to offlaner, I'm like, I hit into a conundrum. Like, okay, well, when you think about the offlaner, like, because of the way I think about it is like, if you actually carry your team, you generally get more points. But because of the way the meta worked last year, like, basically no offlaner did that except for 3-3 and Ice.
Yeah.
Right. So I was like, okay,
but
I guess.
The thing with that is though, oftentimes their teams design lineups and strategies where the offlaner are supposed to carry them.
Yeah.
Like Ice especially is a prime example of that, where they lane and they pick heroes designed to make sure that he is the one winning his lane. He is the one also like then carrying the mid game, right?
Yeah.
So it's like deceptive to sort of like just look at that. But I get that though, and I think 3-3 is also another example of like, yeah, he's carrying the team, but they're specifically picking around him. They're like making sure he gets his Brute Mother, or like his Lycan or whatever, so that he can like own with all the minions and whatever. So it's like, yeah, it's nice, but at the same time, like, would they have maybe won? Like, yeah, let's say they have a really good game, but they lose, right? Let's say 3-3 has a really good game, but they lose. The question then is, would the team have won if they hadn't been limited by his hero pool?
Probably not, because they had CCNC at the time. But
you do have, well, yeah, true.
Like that,
generally,
that's kind of like my point. Is like basically like 3-3 was really good during that period, but I like when I look back historically through Dota, I was like, he actually reminds me a lot of Bulldog. We're like, yeah, you're incredible on one thing or two things or maybe three things, but you can't do anything else. And so even when I look back on that TI3, I'm like, yeah, Bulldog was probably the best offlaner, but you take him out of that team, he probably wasn't the best offlaner.
Yeah, definitely, and that's the thing that I think that NMP needs to look toward. Generally speaking, for this entire season, like they have two of these players now, right?
Yeah,
they have Ace and 3-3. That's a lot of baggage. Like one of them at least needs to grow the fuck not up, but like they need to basically be better. Like they need to become better players this season. Thus far, I just don't see it right now. Yeah. I think it's a little bit unfair for 3-3 to say that as well, because he obviously missed out on the biggest event, and I think these events are actually big factors in like learning and But generally speaking, yeah, this is something that I look towards when I look at this NIP roster, and right now, like losing to TFT and Vega is just not. It's basically not acceptable.
Yeah, I agree with that. Last team we'll talk about is OG, and Viz will talk about the roster shift also. Basically, Anna's like, I did it, boys. I'm out. And I'm like, oh, you son of a bitch. The one time I want to see you go back and you decide to get out. Okay, so Anna's basically like stepped down, right? He'll play bench for them if they need him, but basically he's just out.
He's basically out. They got Pycat, which I think is probably the best replacement they could have gotten, given the available players.
Yeah, basically like
they got him in a time where there was nobody available, I think, pretty much.
Yeah, basically I think I looked at the entire like player pool in the entire world, and the only player I think could have played Anna's role to as good as Anna was Miracle. But obviously Miracle's not leaving Liquid, so I was like, oh, I guess you're just fucked, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah, because like Arteezy couldn't do it. Like Arteezy's good, but he couldn't do it either. And then, so actually my personal option would have been like they just pull out some other random rookie and see how that goes. But I guess they went with Pycat instead.
I will say though that I think, and this is something that, when you see when you read about the reactions of like OG picking up Pycat, and I tweeted a little bit about it, is that like people pretend as if Anna was like the god carry in the best carry in the world. I mean, he was the god carry at TI. Don't get me wrong. Like
at TI, he was not before.
He was, but like we can't know for sure if he would have been able to continue that run. And I think, and this is me saying, even though I have no clue about him as a person, and like this is pure assumption, but I genuinely think that one of the reasons why he decided to take an extended break from competitive Dota is because like he himself has to know that there's no way he will be able to like continue that form. Like OG as a general in general won't be able to continue that form. Like this was a once in a lifetime run.
Yeah,
I will gladly see them prove me wrong if they just do it again. But generally speaking, this was a once in a lifetime run, and they overperformed incredibly hard on every position, basically. Maybe not Thompson. I actually think Thompson has a lot of room to grow even. But I think they overperformed generally speaking.
I'd say
Jerax was like.
I'd say Jerax is about the same.
Jerax is always good, but like No-Tail played was best supported that event.
Yeah,
which he's not always been, especially on a position that he's never played before.
Seb literally saved them as a coach offlaner,
and he basically also never really played offlane competitively before. Like you have to realize that this team overperformed, and I think Ana was also a huge part of that. Or at the least, we can't really know because before that we haven't really seen him. Like the only thing
Anna was out there like playing support or whatever.
It's things that we just can't see, and I think it would have been really difficult to see them continue. Like you can see them now. Like they're not playing as well as they did at TI. Obviously, like 100%, they're not playing as well, obviously. And I think this is where when you do replace Ana, you have to keep in mind that yeah, you probably won't get somebody as good as he was at TI, but he wouldn't have been as good either.
Yeah, that's
So
a fair point.
I think Pycat is a very good replacement. I've always thought of Pycat as one of the most consistent, like baseline consistency players. Like you won't really get it.
Yeah.
You won't really get like a horrible performance out of him. The question is like, what's the ceiling with this line? Like, is there a ceiling? Like, is that, you know, can you ever be as good as you were before? Probably not, but I think they can probably be like a top 8 team in the world.
Yeah, because when you replace Pycat with like Anna, and we're talking about like the TI version of Anna, not like regular Anna. Like that version of Anna is basically like he was a win condition in and of himself, right? Whereas this Pycat, like he's good, but he wasn't always like that, even in like the better parts of his like time in Optic. And then same thing could be said for Thompson. Basically, is like this guy's still technically his rookie season. Like I don't know where he's gonna land exactly, so we'll have to see going forward. But like basically, like OG has like a lot of questions.
And I think the biggest question really is actually what kind of Dota do they want to play now? Because
Anna Dota is not Pycat Dota.
Like I mean, we've only really seen this team play one style of Dota, and that's just like, well, we'll just try to like get back from behind. But the meta has vastly changed because obviously they needed to change the meta. Like that OG won TI because they figured out the meta at the time. Yeah. That meta doesn't exist anymore. So we really have to see like what kind of Dota do they want to play. And again, this is I think one of the reasons why Anna probably decided to like take a break, because he's like, well, the game is going to change. We played the game of like the tournament of our lives, but the meta is going to change. Maybe whatever's going to come up is not something that I'm suitable with, that I'm comfortable with. And I think this goes for the whole of OG. Like OG, they have to figure out if this is something that they can run even with this current iteration. So I wouldn't necessarily expect too much out of OG right now, but generally speaking, this team has proven time and time again that they can figure out the patch with time. Like, I mean, they've won 4 majors, for crying out loud.
It's not, like even though
the team to show
obviously like the lineups has changed, but
I mean the core has stayed, right? The core that has figured out the patch with No Tail and Seb, that's still there.
Yeah, like my assumption is they're still the core. Like, even though like I always thought like Fly was supposed to be part of that core, but I guess not. Like
I mean he probably was, but the thing is, even if you still have 2/3 of a core,
it's still a core.
Still 2/3. Yeah, that's still 2/3.
Yeah, so we'll have to see. Basically, like it's hard because in this circuit, like say what you want about the last circuit, like too many events, you can't really tell the difference between the majors and the minors. They gave you a shit ton of data to work on. Like he's like,
yeah,
you always knew exactly where a team was. In this one, it's much harder to tell because like the important events are happening online.
To be fair, that's only right now, and I think that was the same last year as well. Where between TI and New Year's, it was like a little bit dead. We only had 2 majors at the time, and I think 2 minors as well back then. So I think it's pretty much gonna be the same, if not a little bit less, I guess. But
and then people
next year supposedly there's gonna be much more many more tournaments as well. So it's like I think we'll get more data, but that's definitely something I also look forward to, just seeing teams play these events. I think we said that last time we did the show about Alliance, probably, or whoever. Like they just need to spam these events, these LAN events, these third-party LAN events.
Yeah, basically, I'm like, if you're as new as those like 4 or 5 of them are, like you have to go to a shit ton of events.
Yeah,
I think it's like everybody except Koifa, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I think I'll skip CIS.
Yeah, we can skip CIS, SA. Do you want to talk about the drama with SA, with Pain at all?
I will say this: PPD is the true leader of this generation.
Pretty much.
Has any man become the most hated man in Peru, become the most beloved? I don't know. I've never seen it happen, but it has happened.
I will say that it is interesting that Valve decided. Like honestly, everything I could want to say about this, I've already said on Twitter, so I'll just leave it at that, because I feel like this topic right now. Actually, no. We should talk about it because there's another team right now playing open qualifiers in SEA, playing from China. Like it's so ridiculous how Valve is like, oh yeah, you know what, we yada yada yada, but no, they just don't police the scene at all. They they claim that they investigated the issue.
I don't
I'm
think
100% sure they only
I don't think they did
from PPD. Because if they really investigated the issue, like did you read CCNC's explanation of the things?
Yeah.
Honestly, his explanation sounded very sound. Like they had to fly back and forth because they were playing LAN events in NA.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously he played then in Europe. Like it makes a lot of sense for why he had to leave every now and then. Like if that amount of like flying warrants him not being part of the region, well, get fucked half of NA or Europe even.
Yeah.
Like EG has 3 European players. If you think they live in NA, you're very mistaken.
No, they don't live in NA for sure. Like it's all really confusing if you're talking about Valve, just because like, listen, you know how I know Valve didn't investigate this, because like remember I don't know if you were talking about this back then, but like 2 or 3 years ago, it was like basically there were a bunch of even now I guess, and every like open qualifier would be like, oh look, this guy match fixed. Oh look, this guy like went all the way to the end, literally locking out everybody before he got kicked out. Eventually, he's like, you know, you could have just solved this at the very beginning, but you didn't. And this just kept happening over and over and over. It's like they're not paying attention. They never pay attention.
There have been so many teams invited to like TI qualifiers that weren't even like active rosters anymore. That is like Valve just doesn't really look into all of that, and they outsource it as well, which is almost like you would think it's better, but like
it's not.
Some of these people don't pay attention to this either. Yeah. Like evidently, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, let's just talk about China then. It's the last region, I guess.
Yeah, basically.
You want to talk about SEA at all? SEA is like whatever.
No, SEA is basically SEA is basically in a rut, and I basically said this. They need some dude named Solo, or their equivalent of Solo, to save them from hell, but I don't see that guy rising up. And if you follow like Heen's logic, it was like, yeah, basically draft is like a reflection of your understanding of Dota for all 5 players. Well, if that's also the case, then they basically need like 3 players and then a solo. Because like the only guy I think that knows that much about Dota is Ice. And I don't even know how like into the game he is in general. Like he's not like super competitive or anything, right?
I think the scene is a really big mess, and the fact that Fnatic keeps on walking through these qualifiers is not necessarily walking through these, but yeah, they actually
it's walking through. It's walking through.
It's like just evidence that this region just has regressed in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. It doesn't help, obviously, that some of their best talent is getting stolen away from other regions.
Secret,
you have Afu,
LGD,
you have Afu playing in China.
Ajit's gone. All the Koreans left.
I mean, even our team has like 3 SEA players, right?
Yeah.
It really doesn't help that this happens, but I think one of the reasons is because SEA, as one of the few regions, can't actually attract outside talent anymore. Mm-hmm. It's like people don't flock to SEA. Like when they were most successful in the past is, you know, obviously Demon coming in. That was a huge thing.
Fnatic, that version of Fnatic, those Koreans.
They had the Koreans coming in as well, but then like that's not new talent anymore, right?
Yeah.
And where's the new talent coming from? They have talent within their own region, but that's it. Nobody's going to SEA because like playing and living in SEA is a shit show. Salaries are really low. Living conditions are really bad for a lot of like the Westerners at least. So SEA as a region is really regressing, and I can almost understand why Valve is like shitting on this region with only 2 slots again.
Yeah.
Even though they do perform well-ish on LAN, like TNC played really well on LAN. They're. But yeah, SEA for me right now, that region is really whatsoever. This region, I just don't really see any. I don't have any expectations.
Like the only way you could actually figure out what's going on with SEA is if like you did some actual like investigative journalism to find out if there's like systemic issues in the scene or whatever, but it's like it's basically stagnated to hell, I guess.
Yeah.
Like nothing's improving, and that's like if you're not improving, you're basically like being left behind in Dota.
Speaking of not improving, this is the next region, China.
Yeah, everybody except LGD should get the fuck out. Like I am serious. I'm so tired of this region right now.
Same. I am very tired of this region. They are. I don't know. It's LGD is not even like not first place, but I feel like that's like whatever. Like you get beaten by Team Aster, but Team Aster is not gonna like.
Team Aster isn't gonna do anything. Come on, man.
I don't expect anything from them or Vici Gaming on LAN.
Like I can expect something from
maybe
Vici
like
Gaming,
maybe like
not...
a top 6 run again.
No, Vici Gaming could do something, but not at a major.
Yeah, probably.
Like they did get second right before that major. I will give them that. But like I was like so I was like finally, Ori and Paparazzi are finally no fuck it's all happening all over again. This goddamn team.
Did you see what happened to Newbie?
No, I didn't see what happened to Newbie.
They lost open qualifier for the minor.
That's pretty bad.
And I think they lost. No, not for them. No, they did lose open qualifier to the minor. Something along those lines. Yeah. I mean, they definitely weren't here at the major qualifier because I think they also lost open qualifier to this one. Like, I don't know, Newbie as a team is just dead.
Yeah.
Which is like, if you look at the team, like they still have SECC. Right.
Yeah, they
like,
still have Faith, still have Mugi.
That's what really feels bad, man.
That team's gone.
And I mean, in general, if you just look at a lot of these teams, like, yeah, you see a lot of the very familiar names. Oh, that's another team with Super and DDC. Oh, that's another team with this player. It's another team with this player, but it's really just regurgitating old lineups over and over again.
Like, did you? Okay, I guess I'll explain it like this. Did you ever read the article I wrote about, like, basically, like, Secret 1.0 is, like, literally running the game now?
I do not. Well, no, but you told me about it. But basically, like, the part where they split up and they basically formed the best teams in the world.
Yeah, basically Fly, No Tail, Puppy, Kuroki, S4, those 5 players, they all split up, and then they've created, like, 4, like, pretty legit teams.
Pretty much the best teams in the world.
Yeah.
At one point or another.
Yeah, basically, like, that version, there's no, like, there's no Chinese version of that.
But that's the thing. There's no Chinese version of that because there's nobody actually stepping up to become, like, a captain.
Yeah, like, all the captains are gone. Like, all the people I would consider, like, Captain Aura types are gone. And then, like, nobody else has ever figured it out, basically.
Yeah, this region is really struggling to find, like, there's no surprise that the best teams in the past have always been, in the past couple of years, have always had like a leader that you knew was good going into it, or had like a super good mix out of, like, established, experienced players and, like, the young, hungry talent from outside or whatever.
Yeah. And does it feel like they might have like some talent, but, like, they don't have the other part, or they have the other part, but the other part keeps teaming up with, like, other older talent. It's like the mixes are all bad.
If you look at all these, like, rosters, there's very good individually skilled players. Like, you have Afu, you have Monet, you have End, you have hell, even Super. I'll throw in Super. He is probably, like, at any given day, you'll probably be able to, like, field a top 6 team with Super. Really. You know, you have, like, Kaka, you have whatever, but it doesn't mean jack shit if they can't actually form a proper team that works together. And I think this is just... Honestly, I don't see... And this is another thing that, you know, like, with investigative journalism, maybe you could have, like, a proper reason for why this is happening, but these Chinese teams, if they keep shuffling the way they have been for the past 4 years... Yeah, can you get a Wings? Can you get, like, another LGD? Maybe?
I don't think you get a Wings. But
well, probably not. Wings is a once in a lifetime kind of thing. But yeah, you can get lucky. Like, the thing is, though, you can get lucky and have that one team that maybe wins TI.
Yeah.
You can get lucky and maybe have that team that gets second TI or third or whatever. But realistically speaking, are you going to have a competitive region the way you've been shuffling? No, because this region has been going backwards, and, like, this is the first time in, I think, 6 years or 8 years, no, 8 years of Dota 2 competitive history that you could feasibly say China doesn't deserve the, like, 3 slots for the major. And that's a travesty because, again, there was a point where they deserved 5. And now you can reasonably say they didn't deserve 3. And they still don't deserve 3. Or, I guess, 3.5, considering they also get a minor slot.
Yeah. It's like... The way I think about it is, like, if you just think about it generationally, in terms of, like, all-time great teams, China's always generally produced, like, 3, 4. Now they're producing, like, 1 at a time. Like, before LGD, it was Newbie, basically.
Yeah.
And then that's it. It's like, if it just feels like everything's been going downhill since then. It's like, because, like, I don't know exactly what it is either. It's like they still getting enough talent in to the door, but, like, I guess Xiaowei literally going to his log cabin was the end of it all.
I actually think one of the things, and I might be completely wrong. I want to say that in like that 2014 period where tournaments started inviting Chinese teams to LAN events, right?
Yeah.
There was more diversity in the teams that they invited. But in the past couple of years, they've basically always only invited like the top team outside of China, like to events outside of China. And I think it kind of hurts them, honestly. I think a lot of these teams would also benefit from just playing against international teams. Like I feel like if I look at eHome, for example, I feel like eHome for the past 2 years, basically now, at least ever since the core Faith Beyond and Innocence have been playing for eHome, like they've been struggling to just like get past a certain point in China. And it feels like a lot of these teams, and like I've said, I mean, obviously it would be great if they could just get players outside of China already, just give them sort of like this boost, like fresh perspective. Like it really can't be stressed how much a fresh perspective in Dota can change the game. But I think just playing in tournaments outside of China would help them as well. But effectively, they just keep playing one another. But if you look at Europe, like Alliance, for example, they got to ESL 1 Hamburg before the major. What other Chinese team got to ESL 1 Hamburg? I mean, it was Vici Gaming. What else was there? Like, Vici Gaming. Was it Aster?
Yeah, it was Aster.
Yeah, Vici Gaming, Aster. All right, which is great for both of them. But Vici Gaming already probably a competitive team anyway. Aster, I guess it was actually pretty important for them to get that experience out of the way. I mean, they did now place first in the qualifier, mind you, right? Like, I think these experiences matter, but because we have so many more tournaments outside of China where we just generally invite more European or more NA teams, like this experience really matters for Chinese teams. I actually think, now that, like, the more that I think about it, I really think this actually matters for Chinese teams as well.
Yeah. It's always hard to say because it really depends on like the players, I guess. As that, like, some players do learn a lot when they're sent out to these tournaments, and then there are some other types of like teams where it's like it doesn't matter how many times you send them, they're not going to learn anything. They'll just play whatever they play, right? So it's always super random in that sense. But yeah, basically, I feel like China's in a rut, and they haven't made like the correct mixes for the second and third best teams, at least not yet. Like,
nope.
Aster is still like at least one mid laner away. Like, I don't believe in Love You Love Me.
At least not for now. I guess we shall see for the major. I think this is pretty much where we can leave it. But right now, China, like you said, or like we've both been saying, they're in a rut. They need to figure something out. LGD, we say the only competitive team. I think Vici Gaming, realistically speaking, can always still like contest top 6. Team Aster can probably also contest for top 8, top 6, maybe sometimes. But that's basically.
I don't know. I feel like Aster completely capitulated at the last major. Makes me completely lose confidence in them. But
could argue that you could argue that it was their first.
It was
like their first major.
It might have been like literally their first scrims actually, because like they did it right before
with the new
major.
roster. Yeah, with the new roster as well. Like,
yeah.
Well, so. We shall see. But generally speaking, it is sad that we can only really see LGD as a title contender.
Yeah.
For any of these events, and this is a very sorry state for China. Whereas in Europe, Secret, Liquid, easily, VP, EG. I think the West has so many more teams that you could like count as title contenders. Whereas in China, you just like look at LGD, and even LGD, I think is actually not even like the top 3 team right now. At least based on their performance.
Based on their performance, yeah. But I do know, like they just straight up said like they were burned out of their TI, which makes sense. Because they basically lost like the most important tournament of their lives, in the most epic finals of their lives too. Oh. So it's like that makes sense. Like in the same way, I gave like Liquid a pass on failing the last major cycle. Like I gave like LGD a pass on this one. It's like, well, both of you just did come off of TI, so whatever. Right. So that's kind of how I feel about that. But yeah, I guess we'll move on to CS:GO.
Well, we could talk about the Bucharest Minor.
Oh yeah, the Bucharest Minor. As well. Let's see here.
Just briefly talk about some of the teams that are going to be playing there.
Let's see here.
So this is the last step, basically, towards the major. One slot still has to be filled. I mean, I guess we could just talk about like which team we think is most likely out of all the regions.
Which team's
There's
most
only
likely to make it? I think it's going to be OG or NIP. Seems the most likely. Like, yeah.
I think there's an oddball chance that like some random Chinese team or SEA team finds like something that really works in the meta right now and just runs with it.
Maybe.
Like Tigers, for example, at the minor. I didn't think they were really that great, but I think they found a way. Like I think they just found their own rhythm at that event, and that kind of like they ran with it.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, OG and NIP are probably actually I wouldn't discount Final Tribe either, because they've been playing really well in this major qualifier, and they did beat NIP.
Mm-hmm. But we'll see. Yeah. Basically, like I feel like it would probably be a European team. As much as I like Y and Faith Beyond, I know I've completely lost any ability to ever believe in them ever again. So, yeah. I think about it covers it. You got anything else?
No, I'm good.
Wait a second. King Gaming's like mid laner is literally a dash for his ID.
Sounds about right.
Fucking god damn it. Can't handle this. Alright, so I guess go on to CSGO. ECS, Season 6 Finals was like the big one. It's like 8 teams showed up. Astralis, North, Mouse, NIP, NRG, MIBR, Liquid, and Cloud9, I suppose, even though they had like a stand-in.
They also only got there last minute because Renegades couldn't make it because of visa issues.
Mm-hmm.
Two things I want to say about this before we talk about the actual teams.
Okay.
Horrible format.
Yeah.
I really dislike GSL that has elimination in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like if it's for seeding, I am like whatever. That's actually I think fine with. But GSL with straight up elimination is dumb because you run into the chance of like playing the same team twice.
Yeah, no, I think that's.
I think it matters a lot because matchups matter.
Mm-hmm.
Like some teams will be able to play better against certain teams, even though they aren't actually on the same level.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just my.
I will say this for, I guess in defense is like, is there, because it's not like they have a lot of time to run this format.
Yeah, you could at least swap the decider match. I know some teams have done it before, or some tournaments have done it before. I know there are teams that don't like it. I've talked to some players before that don't like it because it screws you with your preparation because you have to prepare for a team that you don't really know unless like until the last moment, right? But I feel like that would still be better, and I've talked to people also that would prefer that because again, matchups do matter. I don't know. I think there are always ways to deal with that. Like you could even start with a double. Like I would even prefer like the summit format where you have a double limb bracket just straight up from the get go.
That one's pretty cool. I like it.
Like if you just have good seating, I think that's totally fine to do that. But yeah, instead they do this where you also have like best of ones and like the first matchups, like whatever. Also could also always do like the IEM approach and also have like 2 matches run at the same time on 2 different streams.
They could
I know some tournaments
they could
don't
do
value
that, but they won't do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we'll go through this real quick. Basically, NA got trashed out of this one. Pretty disappointing. Like Cloud9, you should have been trashed, so no disappointments from you really. But as for Energy and Liquid, that's both of them did pretty bad, I guess. I will say, like, basically, I didn't know about this, but basically Energy has like a super favorable matchup against Liquid online at least.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of those matches, yeah, and that was that's why I think going into today's Malta thing
was surprising.
Some people were like favoring Energy.
Yeah.
Because of that history.
Yeah, so it's not as bad, and in the end it's basically just 3 maps, but I'll go ahead and say I think Liquid played pretty bad here overall, even if like Energy's a favored to beat them. Energy.
It's unfortunate that it happens here.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Because this is like one of these lands where you want that experience to play against Astralis and MIBR, I think.
Well, in Liquid's case, they've played Astralis the most of any team, so
I mean,
I know,
more
but experience.
I know, but I feel like, you know,
maybe another shot at the title to ultimately fail and cry again. Yeah, maybe that's what Liquid needed. NRG's, I feel like it's kind of disappointing, but I will say North played like out of their minds to beat them.
Yeah. It was an unreal performance from North.
Yeah.
And then it was like, well, you got.
And then they're like, oh,
trash,
back to reality, and then you got trashed
Yeah.
out, right? You got beaten down by MIBR pretty bad.
I would say that I think it's just really unfortunate for NIG because I think this, like, if you just looked at the results of this tournament, you would probably say, oh, poor NIG. They just, like, you know, they're not really, like, grabbing their chances or whatever. But I feel like that would have been valuable for them to play, you know, against MIBR.
They did play against MIBR before this tournament, though.
Or did they?
Yeah, it was IM Chicago. They beat them.
All right, they beat them. All right, they beat them.
Yeah,
see,
I think.
Imagine if they beat them again.
Yeah, like I feel like it's hard to know with this MIBR because but basically I feel like NRG could probably beat them consistently. Yeah, I think I'll go with that. Like, because basically, NRG is a bit weird, right? Because like they
have really weird matchups as well. Like we beat them consistently as well, which is kind of weird because they're definitely a better team than us.
Yeah, like this team's like there are some teams they always beat, and then there are like teams they can upset pretty easily. But then there are like teams that always beat them, or teams that can upset them. So like NRG is a bit weird like that. I'm not exactly sure why or how it's happening. And like I get the feeling like none of the players on the team necessarily know either. They're like, yeah, sometimes communication just breaks down out of nowhere. And we feel the pressure, then we get kicked out of the minors. Like, oh, okay, like I guess that happens, yeah. And like, yeah, sometimes Stork isn't that great, but then like you also have Breezy and Ethan, and they're both pretty fucking good. So, like, I feel like in terms of like raw firepower, they're still a pretty good team.
Well, so, they definitely are, yeah. And I think individually speaking, they have like really strong players.
Mm-hmm.
But like you've been saying, essentially, like, it's such a weird team, and you would think that they would make the major.
Yeah.
But like you said, they already lost the mind last time because of nerves and because of whatever. Like, who's to say that they are going to make it this time as well? And I think they really should make it this time because they are, without a doubt, among the best top 16, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But right now, like, I still worry whether or not they could make it. Because, like we've been saying, they have weird matchups, but they just lose to some teams consistently.
Yeah, like
I actually don't really, off the top of my head, know who they're gonna face in the minor qualifier. Probably like Rogue, Ghost, and whatnot. And Ghost is actually
no
really
Ghost. They won't play Ghost. They won't play Ghost because Ghost can't play because they have Steel.
Oh, Ghost can't play, yeah, because of Steel. Lucky them, I guess.
Yeah. Ghost is Steel's pretty good. Off topic, I mean, Steel's like ridiculous.
It's such a shame that Ghost also like a top 16 team for sure.
Yeah, like he's the only one that's basically proven like the whole R by power thing wasn't like a complete like false hype. Like the rest of them all fell off except for Steel.
Yeah, the whole like this is basically Valve just say like if it wasn't for Steel, Valve could feasibly say, well, the ban really didn't matter, did it?
Yeah, I get. But yeah, basically, like when I think about NRG, like their only like truly god tier map is Overpass. I guess if you had to define a symptom, is that fact. It's like as good as Daps is as a leader, and I think he's actually one of the better leaders in the world. He and his team haven't figured out a second god tier map yet. And it's been a long time. I don't think they're going to get a second god tier map. So that's like one of the reasons. So long as you take out Overpass from them, like they're beatable. But on the other hand, they can also beat people. So, like I said,
and I mean they've consistently been proving now that they can beat people on pretty much not only just Overpass, but a lot of these maps.
Yeah. So like, I think just Overpass is like the only one who's like nobody wants to mess with them except for like Astralis and Navi. That's about it. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one. I guess we'll go with NIP. NIP is interesting, I guess. I feel like how to explain this? I feel like they have a shit ton of firepower. And Lekro is like Lekro is a pretty basic in-game leader. Like he'll run the default first, and if that doesn't work, he'll switch over to an execute and just try to like force his way in. But beyond that, as a team, I just feel like they have a lot of individually skilled players, and that's kind of what they run off of. And they have like a surprisingly good matchup against Astralis, but even then, like if you put them in a best of 3 against Astralis just wipe them out.
Yeah. You really. It doesn't really feel like you're gonna win against Astralis by just having good firepower.
Yeah, I feel like they're a dangerous team for like from like top 6 to top 10, like that range. Like they can beat most of the teams there. They are one of those teams there, I guess. But like I feel like they're basically just one Crims away from like destroying the world.
No, I actually think so too. I feel like they just need. It doesn't really feel like they need that much more to like become like a better team, like a significantly better team. That is. Obviously, I think over time they can work on a lot of stuff and still like creep up like a couple of ranks in the world. But for like a top 4, top 5, it does feel like they probably need one more player.
Yeah, but like the problem with that is like I feel like if they wanted to get a one Crims move, they should have done it like 2 months ago before Fnatic. I mean, yeah, Fnatic made that fucking crazy run.
Like Fnatic now.
Fnatic is like
not going to change their roster.
Why
and they look
change?
better.
Yeah. They might even look better than NIP, which is like ridiculous. But hey, it works out for them, right? So
Swedish Counter-Strike is back.
Yeah. Or
back on the menu.
Yeah, but still not as good as Danish Counter-Strike.
Existence Galaxy, you know?
Yeah.
At DreamHack. Swedish Counter-Strike is back on the menu.
Shit. All right, so I guess last 2 teams we'll talk about is MIBR and Astralis. Did you watch any of these games?
I watched the finals, and I watched a little bit of NIP Astralis. I watched one map from MIBR North.
Yeah, well, I guess the finals will be all that matters, but I'll frame it like this. Basically, like I feel like Moses basically said this, like, you can't really expect for MIBR to have Fallen, Cold Zero, and for fire off all the time, because it's basically what happened in this tournament. It was like all 3 of them had a really good tournament, so it felt like a return to form. And I feel like that's basically their essential problem moving forward, is like they've been to 7 lands. Among those 7 lands, this is the only one where all 3 of them like were really good. So,
it kind of reminds me of EG 2 years ago, maybe, where they had the core of Sumail Universe Arteezy.
Okay.
You knew that they obviously those were the 3-star players, right? And you knew that they could like pop off, but were they always were you really sure they were gonna like pop off at the same time? And more often than not, that wasn't the case. And that just like if you rely on individual performances, but then you'll rely on pretty much more than just one player to pop off, like you just can't win. Like that's not how you win games. That's not how you win games. That's how you gamble on winning.
That's how you make upsets, right? But it's not how you like create a top team.
I guess obviously for MIBR it's still like the way they are right now, it's still enough for like top 8.
They're probably like top 6 right now.
Or top 6 consistently, but and I do think, you know, obviously like this tournament, like they did put it really fucking close in both maps. But still in the end it did feel like Astralis was always, not always, but most of the time Astralis was still the better team, like no doubt. And that's just sad. And then when you put it to perspective, like what happens if, you know, and if you put Navi into them, and if Liquid actually shows up, like is MIBR still second in this tournament?
What if that Fnatic comes back? Would MIBR beat that Fnatic? I don't know.
Yeah, it seems just like this team right now. Honestly,
even if you go down a peg, like, well, he lost NRG last time. Let's just say that's not going to happen again, right? Right.
It just feels very sad right now watching this MIBR play.
Like,
but
here's the way I'd explain MIBR is like, yeah, you can. When we talk about the individual performances, the reason like they're so critical is because those are the 3 defining players of MIBR's strategy. And if all 3 like you don't necessarily need all 3 of them, but you have to have at least 2 permanently. Because if you think about it, like the first version of Brazil was like Fallen and Coldzera always going
Fallen
off.
Coldzera, yeah.
Second version of Brazil is like Coldzera and Fur always going off. This version of Brazil is like Coldzera isn't always going off, but he's like pretty good. But then after that, it's like Fallen sometimes, Fur sometimes, and then that's kind of it. And it feels like basically that style only works because they were playing on, because like that style is basically defined by like two polarized like stars. Like one's like super aggressive, the other super passive. One opens the round, creates space, the other closes the round. But Fallen and Fur can't do that, I think. Like I feel like Fallen's better opera now, but he isn't like a superstar.
But and that's I think one of the reasons why they brought in Stewie though.
But like that's like the problem is like if when I look at this team, Stewie and Tarek are basically just the replacements for Taco and Bolts.
They are. They no, I agree, but at least the way I saw it when they brought in Stewie, I thought they wanted him as a second star player next to
Cold. No,
Cold. I mean, that's not how the roster works right now. But
yeah,
I thought that this.
I agree with you. Yeah. It's like I felt like what they should have done at the time was like they should have switched over to like a super aggressive rifle style, and like basically they tried this when the first time Phelps joined the team with Fur, and like the two of them just banged everything off the head. But like the problem with that was like it was really inconsistent. Like one tournament they got to the finals, the next tournament they dropped out of groups. So I'm like, oh fuck this shit, go back to the old style. But because they lost Taco, I felt like they can't go back to the old style, and like they've still stuck with it. So I feel like they're just kind of wasting Stewie and 2K and like Tarek's like potential as star players. But like I don't necessarily know if Fallen or Fur or Coldzera think that.
That's what I'm kind of looking forward to. What's it? Blast Istanbul or whatever.
Yeah, without Fur.
What's the next? Yeah, without Fur, because it just forces them to play something different.
I think it's either that or ESL Pro League. I think they're playing at. Let me check real quick.
No, I think it's actually might even be both.
Yeah, they're playing at both, but Lisbon is the one without Fur.
Lisbon wasn't.
Yeah.
I really am looking forward to that because I think but being forced to, swap things around might help them see how they can utilize their players differently. But again, it like depends on whether or not they're actually going to pop off. It's like a really rough event as well to like do play around with all of that shit. I mean, you have
it is like a bunch of best of ones, right?
NIP. It's best of ones as well, and then you have like some of the best teams in the world. And honestly, I think Cloud9 with Kiyoshima and Golden, Kiyoshima now and then Golden obviously not being gone.
Is he still?
Is he actually at the event?
I don't know. Like I feel like he's been like sick for a long time, so I don't actually know.
He was gone for the last two events, right?
Yeah, I don't actually know if he's actually healthy enough to go play.
But if he was there, I actually think Cloud9 with this lineup looks better than they did before.
Yeah, but Kiyoshima is pretty
good. I like to see the addition of Kiyoshima.
Yeah. Kiyoshima is a pretty good player. It's just like, for whatever reason, his rep is really bad.
I really want to know why people just have been ignoring him for like 2 years.
He could have been the solution for a bunch of these French teams.
I 100% agree. But, the French teams, they have their own problems with...
Yeah, they have their own problems.
Egos.
Yeah. So...
it's rough for MIBR at this next event, but again, I do hope that the change helps them. Sort of like maybe I feel like this is the one event where you can actually test things out because it is best of ones. You don't have your full roster. It is not a lot of money or not a lot of prestige on the line. It's like
yeah, it's a smaller.
Why
event.
not go for something crazy? Yeah,
and people do learn from those types of events. So we'll see how it goes. Now we'll go on to two of the smaller events.
Yeah.
DreamHack Winter happened. Your team was there, and it met the wrath of Babar and friends. Yeah.
Let's just say that this event was not as we imagined it would go.
If you just look at the pure rankings, it should have been you, Optic, or Enk probably fighting for the title.
I mean, realistically speaking, absolutely realistically speaking, our major one was an overperformance.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and we've been almost worse than we were before since.
Yeah.
That's the worst part, actually. Because if you look at some of our online performances in EPL and ECS, like, we lost matches that we shouldn't have lost. And, like, you could feasibly say that we would have won before the major. And it really sucks that, the team is in a rut right now. But yeah, technically speaking, going by rank, I think we should have been one of the top teams at this event.
Mm-hmm.
Realistically speaking, going into the event, I thought that Heroic and ENC, or ENC, whatever you want to call them, were probably ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
Because they had more, I don't know, they're just more consistent teams. And that's the thing. Like, in a best of 3, it feels like we can either bang people out 16-4 or we get banged out like 11-16 or whatever. So yeah, this was a rough event for us. But I guess something's in the water in Dallas, because that didn't only happen to us. Actually, do they live in Dallas? I don't think they are in Dallas anymore. They're probably all in Europe right now, right?
Yeah, they're all in Jokoping. Everybody got.
No. I mean, like, generally speaking.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, we traveled from Dallas too.
Yeah, I don't know, but
I think Optic lives in Denmark now.
Yeah, but basically, Optic also got screwed. And between the two of you, I'll go ahead and say I think Optic is is much worse than you guys are in terms of relative expectation.
They are, and if rumors are true, really rumors, they also earn a shit ton of money, all things considered. So they really should. I feel like they really feel the pressure now. But I will say, at least they lost to the tournament winner, ENC. I think losing 1-2 to ENC is nothing to be ashamed of. Like, that happens.
But they also lost to Bravado in a best of 1.
But they lost to Bravado in a best of 1, which is definitely the thing that shouldn't have happened. But generally speaking, 1-2 to ENC is just it happened. I feel like that could have happened.
Here's the problem I have with Optic is they have this player named Config, and he was a top 5 player last year, and he should literally be banging people's heads off. But at some point between the transition from MSL to Snappy, he's basically lost all of his mojo, and I can't help but think, Optic, you had a chance to get MSL. Why didn't you get MSL? Yeah,
that was a big missed opportunity. And I think they will continue to shake their heads, because Rogue, I think, has. I mean, I've been saying this for a long time right now, right? Mm-hmm. But I think CS will see an era where teams are going to be built around leaders. Like, we had this huge discussion around, do you build around star players? Do you build around leaders? But I think the more sustainable path long term is going to be to build around leaders, especially for tier 2 teams.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's almost easier to build star players up rather than hiring a star player and then giving
it's also
them
cheaper.
It's also cheaper because star players are expensive as fuck.
Yeah.
But yeah, they could have built around MSL and been the next North, the next whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But no, they are now forced to figure out what they want to change, and I think Optic will make the choice to choose Config continuously whenever they can, because he is that star player of that team.
Yeah, it's not basically nobody else is really doing anything on that team. Yeah, basically I think you and Optic are in the exact same boat. You both need to make a change, and the difference though is with Optic, I think they should pick Config over Snappy, because I don't think Snappy's proven anything to me since Glaive left his team on Heroic. Whereas in complexity, Stanislaw I think has proven something to me as an in-game leader at least. So I'd probably be changing one of the players for Cole, and then for Optic, like I said, I think they should have went with MSL. But if it's not MSL, may as well bring Config's old leader back, Hunden. Pretty sure Hunden could get this working better than Snappy at this point.
With Stanislaw, even realistically, even if we were to make a change, realistically speaking, do you ever really think you can find a better in-game leader than Stanislaw right now on the market? You could maybe try to build somebody up, but is there actually anybody available right now? Maybe. Do you consider Kerrigan available?
Kerrigan's not available, is he?
I mean, he probably isn't.
Yeah.
He wouldn't would he actually join our team, or would he join Optic or whatever?
Well,
that's
yeah.
not just generally speaking. I'm saying like there aren't any in-game leaders really available on the market.
Like the only two viable choices you guys could have had was MSL when he was open, or FNS, but obviously FNS is a no go because of the entire thing. So obviously FNS wasn't going to be part of it, and I think they're probably similar, FNS and Stanislaw.
I mean, ultimately, the question is, I think for us going forward, like if we were to make a roster change, like what do we think is the issue with that team? Is it the strategies? Is it the the in-game leading, or is it the execution? What we want to do?
Mm-hmm.
I think if I had to make a choice right now, I think it's the execution, and it's actually pretty evident when you look at the team.
Yeah.
Like people are just not hitting their shots. At the end of the day, Counter-Strike is still just about hitting your shots. Yeah, you can win by planting the bomb and like having it explode, but ultimately you need to hit shots.
Can't get to the bomb plant if you can't shoot somebody. Yes,
basically. And I think right now this team is just not hitting their shots. I think that's just like, I think strategies are sound in a lot of ways, but like they're just not hitting.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, speaking of a team that basically lost their strategy and isn't hitting their shots, G2.
We talked about this a little bit in the pre-show or before the show, before we went live, but you gotta cut them some slack since it's their first event.
Yeah,
but it's not a good first impression.
It is not a good first impression. But it was definitely their first event, and they definitely look like completely new. Like they're like playbook like 1 or 2 deep on a bunch of one map I saw. I was like, oh, you have like two ideas and neither of them worked. It's like, it's not good. So basically, like for G2 to work, I think exact same situation as the last one, except they also have I think Jax is the good player, is like new young and up and comer or whatever. But basically their situation is very similar. It's like Shox or Kenny S have to go off, and then I assume Jax is going to be their third choice, their third like star or whatever. But like the problem with that scenario is like Shox wasn't good as an in-game leader the entire run around the G2. This G2 is like the last G2 except with worse players. Kenny S hasn't been good all year. So it was like, well, what are you really expecting from this, really? Like I'm just not like, I feel like you'll get like you'll get some level of firepower boost because I think Smith's existence, there's like no way, like without even seeing the game, I'm pretty sure there's no way either Lucky or Jax is worse than Smith. So I'll go ahead and say that, right? So it's like you're getting a firepower boost, but it's like, what else? There's no logical like progression here. It's my problem.
It feels like every year this team is just shuffling. Like all right, here's the thing. Here's the ultimate analogy, the Dota and CS analogy. The French scene, in my opinion, is very similar to the Chinese Dota. There's a lot of like reshuffling, old lineups, new lineups, but ultimately, they're not progressing. You don't really see anything getting out of this, right? Mm-hmm. Like they're not really becoming better teams. They're like basically the same team over and over. Yeah, you have a different color. Yeah, you have a different, I don't know,
different faces,
accessory. Yeah, but that's it. That's really it. You're basically the same shit team that you were last season. And I feel like I've been making this point also for a while now on this show, but I really think that gaming and esports in general, and I think now CS really needs to realize that, like, yeah, there are certain advantages to playing in a team with one nationality, and obviously although some of these players might not even speak proper English, so they physically can't necessarily join international teams. But, you know, when you regurgitate the same lineup over and over again, at some point you have to realize that maybe you need to look beyond your border. You know?
The Dota 2 route, yeah.
And in Dota 2, maybe it's a little bit easier, again, because, you know, most of the people are more accustomed to speaking English. And obviously, if you're a Chinese team, it's easier to find a Chinese-speaking player in Southeast Asia than it is to finding a French-speaking player in anywhere.
There's also the problem with, like, because CSGO plays on 7 maps, every team has like specific callouts for
different
every map.
callouts. Yeah.
So
No,
basically,
for sure.
like
100%.
each time you add somebody, it's like you're adding like 200, 300 like different vocabulary terms or something.
100%. Absolutely. No doubt. No doubt.
Like I feel like that's the biggest problem.
I definitely think it is a big problem. But the thing is, like, at what point are you willing to try that over, hey, let's reunite existence and NES again or whatever.
Like, or whatever.
Or Shock. Yeah, it's like, whatever. Like, how often are you going to try that over the past, like, 4 years or in the next 4 years, right?
Like,
and when are you willing to try, hey, you know what? Maybe, and this is something that Fallen did, maybe I'm going to grind FPL. I'm going to learn English callouts for a lot of these spots through FPL. And then I can play in an English-speaking team.
Hey.
Because that's, I think, what Fallen has realized. Like, yeah, it is great to play with Portuguese-speaking players, and, you know, we have our certain synergy, but ultimately speaking, obviously MBR is not the best example because they...
I feel like Kerrigan's probably the best example for this.
Actually, Kerrigan is the best example, yeah. Because
basically, like, I can play in Denmark and be the second best team, or I can create an international superhero squad. And he went from the mercenaries to like the heroes to the superheroes pretty quick. Yeah. Right?
And I feel like this is something that a lot more people should be trying out right now, because, and I'm wondering why organizations aren't pushing for this more actively. Like, if I was G2, if I was, well, even Optic right now, right, I would be like, hey, you know what, you can play your Danish team or your French team over and over again, or you can just start to realize that maybe success lies beyond your language barrier.
Like, I feel like it depends on which team. Like the reason I think, like, for Fallen, I think it was always a fallback for him. Like, just in case there ever came a day like he needed to like leave the team or needed to bring in like an English speaker or whatever. But in his case, his hand is forced rather than his choice. Because like as far as I know, the reason he couldn't get another Brazilian player was because the buyouts are like ludicrous, like 60,000, 70,000, 80,000 for like a player that's never played an international stage in their life. Like, that's a ridiculous amount of money for like basically a gamble. So that's why they went the English speaking route, as far as I know, right?
But the thing is, for me though, like, how, like, yeah, maybe he did it because,
and like the other problem with like Fallen is like the battle with him and Cold Zero, because like I don't necessarily know if this is like Fallen's choice or if like Cold Zero is like, if we don't get somebody, I'm leaving. If we don't get somebody good, I'm leaving. Like, because he did have offers from FaZe. There was that liquid rumor floating about with him and Taco reuniting or whatever, so maybe that was part of it. Like, it's hard to say with that particular team.
True, but I still think that's better than, you know,
better than limiting yourself.
Desperately trying to find somebody that's like Portuguese or Brazilian or whatever in like some sort of like second tier, third tier, fourth tier league, MDL or whatever. It'd be like, yo, we'll rather take you than, you know, trying to actually form a team with players that might honestly even work together really well if you actually tried. I don't know. It just to me feels like if this G2 lineup really doesn't work out, I'm like, at this point, have you really tried everything, or are you going with the most comfortable solution at the time?
Like, with G2, like, here's the problem with the French scene, I guess, is they go where Shox and Kenny S go, or they've gone where Shox and Kenny S have gone. Like, when we talk about like the Chinese scene, the reason they died out is basically because I think ROTK left, in a sense, because like that's where like the huge amount of success revolved around, was his leadership. In G2 and the French scene, a huge amount of the success revolved around Shox and Kenny S as superstar players for the majority of the time. So like they just keep going with them, but eventually, like, I don't think that payoff, that gamble is always going to keep paying off, even though they've done it year after year after year. Like, I feel like eventually that's going to run out, and I think that's why like MBK decided to go. He didn't decide, but like I feel like MBK's choice of going with Zywoo might be the better choice compared to what G2 is doing now.
I mean, so far it definitely is the better choice. Like, Vitality looks much better than G2.
Yeah.
It's not difficult to look better than.
It's not difficult right now. No.
Yeah. I say that, but then
there is another French team that did make it look pretty good though. LDLC.
Yeah, LDLC. That hype died pretty quick.
Yeah, basically.
I do think though that, and I've been saying this in Dota for a long time now. If there's like a team that has like an upset run, right, and even if they die after, like if that the hyper run that team dies afterwards, you can generally assume that there's 1 or 2 players in that team that are legit.
Yes.
Because an upset run isn't born out of nothing. It is always born out of something. You just have to figure out what that core or like what the spark in that team was, and then extract that. Like if you look at any upset run in Dota, at least I can't really say that for CS because I've only been involved in CS for so long. But if you look at any historical run in Dota, you can always extract that one player or those 2 players, maybe even 3, that were actually legitimately good and that stood the test of time and are now still pretty good. So I think going forward in the LDLC, maybe 1 or 2 of those players will eventually stand out. Yeah.
All right. If I had to make a prediction, I think the 2 guys are going to get farmed are Alex and Amanek. And here's the reason, as far as I can tell. Alex plays a pretty good like kind of like a lurk style, I guess, but a pretty aggressive one where he's just opening space for other people. And I think he's also the caller for that team, and he speaks English.
Which I think is probably maybe even the biggest
boon, right?
Well, yeah.
And then like the other point is like he did spend a pretty decent amount of time playing under Existence and Maniac. So I feel like he would, of all the players around, he might understand structured calling the most, even though I think like his mid-round calls are super risky a lot of the time. And then I think like Amanek is just a very good mid-round player, and those are those are just generally pretty good to have. So I think those would be the 2 guys. The third potential one is Devil Duvek, but I haven't seen enough from him. Like I feel like he's just a solid player, but I don't know if he'll stand this test of time. So I feel like if any players are getting farmed out from that team, it's those 2.
No, sounds about right. I would have definitely said Amanek as well, but I didn't even consider that Alex was obviously also English. Yeah,
English and a caller, and like pretty good player. So, plenty of good things all around. He doesn't. For sure. I don't think. Yeah, I feel like that'd be a decent choice. So, those are the 2 guys.
I mean, I guess we could still see with this team, like going forward, if they maybe can still.
I don't think they're gonna make another upset run.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I feel like it's really unlikely. Like the thing is, like I think these teams here, a bunch of them have played LDLC. Right, like Heroics probably played them a bunch of times. X6 Galaxy's probably played them a bunch of times online, and I'm like, well, your shit's not gonna work against us. We play this against this all the time. Whereas like those higher teams are like, what the fuck's LDLC doing? And then they had a good day. Like each player had a good day, each different map, each different series, and they made it through. But like they can't repeat that. So.
Nope.
And then of course we go to Easy for Ents. I guess just wrap this up. Ents is the winner of the entire thing. I feel like I think they would have been the choice I'd pick going into this event. I feel like Sergey's really good, and Alu's always like pretty solid, and their style is just good.
I honestly think that Alu is a player that, like, when he got kicked from NIP, like that was just 100% because he was like the outsider of that team, not because he was actually bad. I always thought that he was actually a really consistent upper that can pop off. He was not necessarily like the star player of any given team, but he's generally like very consistent and then has pop off moments, which is like is more than he can ask out of most oppers, really. So I feel like if he wasn't comfortable with Ents right now, like he could probably go to a couple of other top tier teams, maybe.
Yeah.
But right now, I mean, Ents, they're like poking into that next tier right now, or have been poking. So yeah, I also would have picked them as favorite going into.
Yeah, and I feel like if you consider his time on FaZe with Kerrigan, he was a pretty stable like 3rd star, I guess is how I'd put it. And like I actually think like in the current meta of Counter-Strike, you kind of want that type of player, like a stable like a stable op player. That's not necessarily like the superstar and needs it every round, but obviously he prefers playing in Finland. Like that's one of the reasons like he went to ENT after the NIP kick, even though he probably could have joined a better team. Like, I think he could have joined Liquid actually at that point, but yeah,
maybe
yeah. But basically that's kind of how it works out. So whatever. I think like if this ENT team keeps getting better, that Mouse team is has hit its ceiling, right? So if Sunny decides he wants to go back home to the cold winters of Finland, he can join this team, and he'd have a pretty sick team, right?
To the motherland. No, definitely. But at the same time, like, you know, again, I actually think that also Alu could just move on, or Sergey even.
Mm-hmm.
Like
they don't have to stay here, but they probably will for now.
Likely, like what people say about Finnish people, in my experience, is very true. Like there's a certain type to them, like not even national pride, but it's just like they're like personas. They're like very calm, very like reserved people, as far as I can tell. I mean, I've also like met them in a way, like they can be very outgoing and whatnot, but generally speaking, like they don't necessarily strike me as the most like I could never see a person like Config being Finnish. Basically, that's what I'm saying. Obviously, there will be that that person.
There must be some exception to the rule.
Yeah,
but like generally
speaking, it just doesn't feel that way. And I don't know, they might just feel comfortable with one another more so than just like leaving. But I mean, ultimately, they are still competitive, and they're still competitors, and they still want to be the best at some point. So I do think that going forward, Sergey and Alu are far in potential in the next major shuffle. Sergey maybe more so than Alu, actually.
Yeah, I feel like Sergey has more years on him, so so he has more time to improve. So I'd probably go with Sergey. So yeah, all right. The last tournament is
last event,
Supernova Malta. Basically,
most random event that I've ever seen. By the way,
apparently I heard it's a very good event for people involved, but
I mean, it's in Malta. That means that there's a lot of money involved. That means that they have a lot of money to like take care of people.
Yep.
And Malta has these weird like tax exemptions where basically it's like a tax haven for a lot of people. So, you know, there was likely a lot of money involved that made it very easy to host it and like very easy to like for people to like, which is great, honestly speaking. Like players want to be treated well.
Yeah.
And Malta's like a warm location right now as well, so it's like the perfect location at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
But it just felt so random because if you look at the teams invited, it felt like, hey, you know what?
Who wants a vacation in Malta?
Who wants a vacation in Malta? Everybody raised their hand and we're like, all right, you get a vacation. You get a vacation. And then you have like this assortment of like, oh, we have some of the best teams in the world. Then we have Team Penguin. And then actually Virtus Pro and Tyloo are the most random, but still.
Virtus Pro is always looking for a vacation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, like Liquid and Energy should have been the favorites to win this one. I feel like Hellraisers had some interesting potential, and like they just got Hobbit. But the way they built the team is different from how I envisioned it. Basically, they're like, Hobbit, you take Bondix rules. And it's like, all right, cool. Whereas I was thinking of it like, oh, they're gonna rebuild it, retool it, just like when Glaive got Magisk. They build it from the ground up, and then. No, they didn't do that. Like, oh, you just fit in. We'll just see how it goes. And they got about as far as you could expect with that kind of thing. Which is like, they got to the playoffs, got knocked out by NRG. That's about it.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah.
How did I didn't see quite all of it, but how did Big do against Liquid?
Big actually played pretty close. Like they were running a comeback on Inferno for a pretty good amount of time. It's like, so I thought maybe they could do well on Overpass, but like they kind of got rocked on Overpass, especially their CT side. And I think a part of it's going. And when I watch that, I think like when I look at it, I think Big's going through like identity crisis, where they don't like Smuya basically said like they got super cocky after the major and stopped practicing. So like that doesn't help.
Which is really bad considering going into the major you could tell that they've been grinding so hard.
Yeah.
Like one of the things that let them stood out going into the major, or actually more so going into ESL1 Cologne than the major, I think.
Yeah.
Was the fact that they just they just had their strats down. Like their utility usage like was always perfect, which was obviously something that people highlighted, right? Like at some point there was like a stat where I think was it Tapson? No, was it Nex? I don't know. One of them had like more utility damage than NIP's riflers did the entire tournament.
Yeah.
Like that's just nuts, right? Obviously, NIP only played like 2 games or whatever because they got eliminated pretty early. But still, goes to show how much they've been grinding not only their own maps and like obviously they need to study where to place them, like where to throw the nades and when to throw them, but like where the opponent is at all given time.
Yeah, like it's a very structured team, right? It's a very godly team.
And it feels like if you don't keep on practicing that, like you lose what made you good in the first place. Like they didn't win because they were like god tier riflers and whatever,
god tier oppers or whatever. No, like
yeah,
they had good performances,
of their prep.
But like the major point was like their structure, right? So
yeah.
So basically, like that's like that doesn't sound good if you got cocky after the major. And then the other point I noticed is like they're basically like having Tapson be the primary op over Smooya,
which I was never a big fan. I feel like even Big at some point wasn't even that big of a fan of Tapson on the op. I mean, got B opt several times during the major.
Yeah.
Instead of Tapson, and I feel like that to me that was always indicative of the fact that Smooya needs to be their main oppa because Tapson clearly doesn't have the confidence on all maps.
But yeah, like the only way I can justify this is that maybe I haven't watched all the big games, so maybe like Smooya is just more inconsistent, or people are figuring him out as an opper. Whereas like, and then like the difference between their styles is like Smooya is way more like aggressive than Tapson, so he's much more likely to do the push, or he's much more likely to do the aggressive peek. Whereas Tapson just plays like this super solid, stable style, like basically like Cajun B, except German. Right, so maybe
more efficient.
Yeah, more efficient. So like that's the only way I could justify it. But like, I look at the results here and I'm like, well, yeah, you played a solid side, but you didn't have a high ceiling. And when you need like a high ceiling and you need to upset a better team, I'd rather have like give Smooya the op over Tapson, see if he can like create some magic.
Oh, for sure. Like, I feel like if you want to have another like deep major run, you want Smooya to be that star player, right?
Yeah.
And on the op as well.
Yeah.
So
like, because I think like Smooya's op is the only thing that's great about him. Like, or not as the only thing, but like that's his best thing.
I mean, he's a pretty generic and average rifler. I'll put it that way. Like,
and I'm sure he's probably learned something about utility by this point. But it's like I'm pretty sure his op is like his main weapon. So,
and I'm sure they didn't add him to the team because of like his other qualities necessarily.
Yeah.
So it does feel weird, but it might just be like you said, they're just in an identity crisis. Maybe things just spontaneously didn't work out. They lost confidence in one another, which is not good going into the major.
Yeah.
But I feel like since there's going to be a bit of a break between now and the major, or not necessarily now because there's a couple of events still coming up, but like between
soonish
Christmas or whatever and then like the major, that they can smooth things out.
Yep.
Because I actually really enjoyed watching Big when they were popping off because I really liked their structured approach. It felt, I don't know, it was just a lot of fun to watch.
It's very efficient.
And Smooya on the op when he is popping off, I mean it's
like that aggressive wild element that isn't naturally a part of the big play style. So I thought that was like the good part, but then apparently they don't like it that much, or like the fact that they're not giving the opps. Yeah. So basically that's kind of how I feel about Big, but they did play a pretty decent series, all things considered, against Liquid. And then as for Liquid beat NRG again. Like they smashed them on Overpass. I didn't see that game. But basically like they went 12-3 in the T side, so it's like that's a blowout.
Ooh.
Right? And like that's supposed to be NRG's best map. Actually that is their best map. So and then as for like Inferno, like I feel like even though like the score 16-14, like that's kind of what you expect from Inferno sometimes. Like the T sides can roll so fucking hard.
No, definitely. Inferno is a map that, and this is why it's like generally like the third like most exciting map, like the exciting map, right, at like big events. because it's not necessarily. I wouldn't call it easy, but it's. I wouldn't say like it's easy to get your rounds there, but it is a map that traditionally does have like those 16-14 results or even overtime results, right?
Yeah.
So 16-14 on Inferno doesn't necessarily mean that much.
Yeah. So yeah, I feel like that. I feel like that about wraps up. The only thing I'll say about this is like Liquid might help Liquid. Like I'm not exactly sure a master of psychology or whatever, but maybe just having one actual like trophy win might get them over the hump. But we'll see.
Uh, yeah, no, I agree. I think generally speaking, when teams do have a sort of like slump, like Liquid has been having for like a, I mean, you could say slump, but at the same
All
time,
second places mostly. But yeah,
at the same time, like Astralis is also just like vastly better team.
yeah.
Like just mentality issues doesn't
Won't
mean
solve
that
that.
you're
No. No.
yeah, won't solve that. But it is worth noting that they have also had performances where you could definitely tell that Liquid is not in on the top of their own game. And like I said, I do think that winning this title does help.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's like a small title, I think the only other noteworthy team in this like tournament was pretty much, or well, the two noteworthy teams are Big and NRG.
Yeah.
Um,
And they beat them
but
both,
I think
so.
I feel like if you're Liquid, you still need to be happy about this, and I think they are. I think this whole tournament in general has been a very feel good experience for them. Like I mentioned before, it is sort of like a vacation.
Yeah.
But then you play some good fucking Counter Strike, you win a title, you beat NRG, which has been sort of like a
been a thorn in your side.
yeah. So I feel like this was a very good tournament for them. But I almost want to say they need just like one more of these. You know, maybe like a I don't know what tournament. Isn't Odense coming up or whatever?
ESL Pro League. That has a Astralis in it. So.
But it has a Astralis in it, so it's like not a small event. Actually, that's probably the biggest event of the year at the end of the year, right?
Yeah, it's the last big event of the year. After that, there's nothing else coming up, I think.
Yeah, I don't think Liquid's actually playing any event before that.
No, like it's happening in like 2 days.
Oh right! Oh my god! Oh my god! Yeah, it's already December 4th. Yeah. Well, Liquid get fucked. No, not get fucked, but it would be pretty. Wouldn't it be pretty huge if Liquid bang out the year by beating Astralis in the finals of ECS Pro League?
That would put a lot of.
That would make the major so spicy.
That would make the major a lot more interesting, but I don't think it's gonna happen.
It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen.
Like the only way Liquid win is if somebody else knocks Astralis out for them. But in order to do that, they have to get knocked out twice. That's not gonna happen.
Yep, it's not gonna happen.
Yep. All right, so I think that about wraps it up. Good show. All right, got any last shout outs to Skim, Cole?
Actually, I do want to give a shout out, and let's not make this a top. Let's really wrap this up. But yeah, shout out to actually all the casters that say that they are not gonna go to the major because of the ban, or as long as the ban actually goes through. Especially Too Good. He really gave up the He
already died. He already died for this cause years ago. He saw it coming.
He saw it coming, and he's like, no, but seriously, I actually think this is a huge deal for a lot of these people because, I mean, some of the casters that did say it, like Grant and Bulldog. I guess Bulldog doesn't really count, but Grant, like, it's not like he was like the super established caster, right? Like, like if you're like a Toby Wan, I feel like you can't afford to not go to a major.
Yeah.
Even if you get shunned for it for like the TI, I mean, you have had already like 7 TIs.
Yeah.
You've likely already earned a lot of money. Like, it's significantly easier to make a stand when you can afford to.
Yeah.
Because you already have the money, you already have the prestige, you already have the recognition. But if you're like somebody like Grant, who probably is about to become like a top tier, whatever talent, it's very difficult to make that call. So I feel like that's a huge props to him.
And TI9 will get very interesting.
Oh my!
It might break up into a literal war.
Yeah, this is. I look forward to a future show talking about all of this because there's so much shit. Much shit.
There is so much crazy shit going on with that. I don't even know. All right, I think that's about it. See you guys later.